Hi, my name is Mirna.
And my name is Ursula.
And together we are Menopausal Vegans.
Otherwise known as maturing ladies who cook whilst discussing various issues.
Our ambition is to turn you vegan.
And if we can't do it, there is nobody that can. Hello, David.
Hello.
Come on in.
You're right.
Nice to see you.
Yeah,
How
good
are
to see
you?
you. Fantastic. Here we go.
Come on in. Look, Mirna. It's David.
David,
Hello.
please sit
Thank
down.
you. Thank you.
Let me wire you all
Oh,
up.
Okay, I've got to put this
Ursula?
on.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
What a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. It's so hot.
Yes, it's very hot.
David, in this baking day, we've been baking for you
Yes.
For me,
our vegan
scones.
all of those vegan
Yes.
scones. all
Yes.
for me.
Everything is
That's
vegan.
good,
Every
actually.
last one is for you.
No, I've never had a vegan scone before, so it's going
Our-
to be a new experience for me.
Our aim is to turn you completely vegan.
I don't
I'm
know
not
if
sure
you'll
if
do
we're going.
that.
You can but try. You can but try.
So, David, how have you been? We would like to introduce you, David Kurten. Most of you know who he is. And if we may ask you a couple of questions.
Of course, yeah.
David, you are running for the Mayor of London.
Yes, I am. I've been running for the Mayor of London for about 7 months now, but the election's been postponed to
Yeah.
May 2021. So we're here, and in the summertime, things are very quiet at the moment. But my goodness, London needs a new mayor, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
What we've got at the moment is terrible. I mean, all his policies are just dreadful for London. We've got crime going through the roof.
Yes.
We've got the roads, so you can't move on them. We've got
Yes.
all these blockages everywhere. And my goodness, he's so politically correct, isn't he?
I know.
mean, some of the stuff he comes out with is ridiculous.
Do you know, this is
totally
what I
agree.
want to ask you, obviously, as a taxi driver. I would like to ask you, because lots of taxi drivers are going to watch this program. What do you think about all this road closure? Because, as we know, Mayor Khan promised renaissance of the taxi trade. That didn't happen. So over to you, David.
Well, I think,
didn't happen.
You know, a renaissance means bringing something back to
Yes.
life again. I mean, what he's doing is he's bringing it to death. to
The
be
exact
honest.
opposite, yeah.
I mean, I hear from people all over, not just taxi drivers, but
Yes.
you know, other business owners, people who just live in the areas where they're putting in these road blockages and so-called low traffic neighbourhoods is
Yes.
the new thing, which actually is a misnomer, because actually it's making more traffic than ever before.
Yes.
Because people can't get from one place to another, or they can't get from their neighbourhood into the main road. I mean, a transport policy should just be simply about getting people or vehicles from A to B as quickly and smoothly as possible. But he's
Absolutely.
made it about all of this social engineering, which
Yes,
is going
absolutely.
on.
Why
And
do you think they're doing this?
Yeah, well, one, you know, on the face of it, you've got the cycling lobby,
Yes.
and
Which
they're
have become
very,
incredibly
very
strong.
loud. They're
Yeah.
very wealthy. They're very well organised. They get a lot of media attention because they got mates in the media, and they're demanding that the main roads are narrowed to make way for cycle lanes. You know, so everybody else has to lose space, so the cycle lobby can get more space. But you look at some of these cycle lanes that are put in, and you know, there's hardly anything on them most of the day. I mean, apart from 1 or 2 hours of the
Yeah.
day, there's nothing there. So it's a complete waste of space, and it's narrowing the roads, and then it's causing congestion everywhere. But,
Yes.
you know, you look beyond that, and you know, it's Sadiq Khan is the mayor, but it's also being supported by the Johnson government now as well. I mean,
Yes,
it is.
They're all on this Agenda 21, train. And there's a lot of things going
Yeah,
on
because
to do with that. It's happening not just in London, but it's happening all over through the C40 cities network.
Yeah,
and
because
so
I
on.
can't see, to me it's totally illogical, because really if we're talking about London being open for business, to me this is completely opposite. What do you think about
Yeah,
it?
right. Sadiq Khan says London is open, but London
Yes.
is closed. The roads seem to be
It
closing
seems to
down.
me that it actually
you know.
it actually hinders business.
Yes.
How's the plumber, the builder? These are
Right.
people that have to have vans. They can't travel on
It just to
public
me
transport.
doesn't really make
You know,
sense. And I thought, what is the point to close the London
I've raised it, many times in the London Assembly with Sadiq Khan, with Will Norman,
Yes.
his cycling commissioner. But they, I put to him, Euston Road, for example, it's a disaster zone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congestion everywhere. What are you going to do about it? Can you not look and see what it's doing? And he's like, we need to give it time to bed in. Just complete sort of denial that anything needs to be done
You see, because
about this.
everybody had this assumption that taxi drivers are against cyclists, what is totally untrue. All we want to do is just share the road. And I think, do you think that's possible?
Look, I'm not against cyclists. I cycle
Yes.
myself,
Yes,
but
the same.
not to work, but at the weekends I
Yes.
cycle. But London is not going to be like Amsterdam,
Yes.
which is a much smaller city,
Yeah.
less densely populated, and it's sort of built with cycles in mind. Or Berlin is another one where the roads are about three
Yes.
times as wide as the roads in London. You can put cycle lanes in. I'm all for putting cycle lanes in quiet places, quiet ways. They're good, but putting them in the main roads, which are the major trunk routes that everybody else needs to use, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because they use this idea that there's too many private cars in London. I mean, that hasn't been true for years.
Yes.
You've got taxis, you've got buses, you've got lorries, delivery vehicles, service vehicles, emergency vehicles mainly. Those are the main classes of vehicles that need to use the roads. I mean, one of the biggest and worst effects of this is that emergency vehicles are
Yes.
finding themselves
Yes.
stuck in congestion, and they can't get from one place to another that they could the week before because someone's put a road barrier in or a big plant pot, to stop people from travelling in a vehicle from one neighbourhood to another. So if you're relying and waiting for an ambulance and an ambulance gets through, then the person might die because of this. It doesn't seem to be any understanding of the
Yes.
effects of this on ordinary people, but they're just sort of banging along this sort of climate alarmism ideology. Look, everyone wants air quality to be better, absolutely, but you can't sort of put
Absolutely.
blockages on all the roads which are going to actually make things worse.
Ursula,
That's
watch,
the
you
problem.
you watched this documentary.
I watched a very good documentary on
And I'm just
YouTube,
about
which
to
is
watch,
called
so-
Planet of the Humans, which they actually tried to pull from YouTube. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Haven't seen that
it's
particular one.
produced by Michael Moore, who's obviously a really, really good filmmaker, actually, but very, very left of centre. It's not presented by him, it's presented by an environmental activist, and he actually looked at the myth of a lot of the green energy. And he actually comes to the conclusion that we're being sold a lie,
Yeah.
and that the two major problems that we have to face are those which most politicians don't want to engage with because they'd be unpopular, which is overpopulation, world overpopulation,
Yes.
and hence overconsumption. That these are two things that they're not prepared to address. Very, very interesting, really worth watching.
Well, I mean, that is true. The
Yeah.
world population's doubled in
Absolutely,
my lifetime.
yeah.
I mean, I'm nearly 50 now, which is, don't know if I look it or not.
No, you
You
don't.
don't?
But I am.
You're a mere baby.
Yeah, right. But when I was born, there were fewer than 4 billion people in the world. Now we're getting on for 8 billion.
Yes.
Yes.
But the population growth hasn't been so much in Europe and North America. It's been in many other countries in the developing world.
I think
They've
this
got
is why
biggest
it's such a political,
population growth.
a political hotball, if you like, that people
this
don't want to
is-
address it.
This is the whole thing about political correctness. They'll
Exactly.
talk about some things.
Exactly.
There's other things which are really important to talk about, and they're like, we're not going to mention that at all.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, and that's one of those things. But for example, David Attenborough, for example, is one of the few people who are, I would say he's a climate alarmist. Well, I'm not, but he does talk about overpopulation.
Yes, he does.
People are starting
Yeah.
to talk about that. But we in this country, we've had a mass influx of immigration in the last 20 years, and we haven't built enough houses to cope with it. There's
No,
not
we
enough
certainly haven't.
hospitals. There's not enough school places. There's not enough road space, trains, and that's one of the reasons the roads are getting more congested, because there's been a big increase in population. But no one's done anything about the infrastructure. I mean, we're a very densely populated country
Yes.
anyway. I think we need to actually try to reduce immigration so it's sustainable. We don't need to be building new towns everywhere, which is what I think the sort of government wants to do. But on the sort of level of the roads, I mean, they're getting more congested anyway because there's more people. But the sort of measures that Sadiq Khan is putting in place is actually making them worse.
I think that altogether the common sense seems to be going out of the window.
That's actually quite interesting, going back to the Planet of the Humans documentary, because it was actually looking at what actually goes into the making of solar panels and what actually goes into the making of the wind turbines, and how actually incredibly unsustainable these things are, and how un-eco-friendly the elements that go in. And I mean, I think most people don't realise that these wind turbines only have a lifespan of about 10 years, and then you have to replace them and again put more unfriendly eco elements within them.
And I think that he brought something to how big businesses are, like Goldman Sachs, putting lots of money behind.
Definitely the timber merchants, and this myth that the burning of timber is ecologically friendly, because all the stuff they put in with it to actually burn it properly causes more CO2 emissions. And of course then you've got the problem of the huge deforestation being caused.
Well, it's something I've been talking about for a long time.
Crazy.
And you know, they've closed down coal power stations in this country because of, you know, climate alarmism. Want to decarbonise. What are they doing instead of burning coal? They're burning wood, which makes just as much carbon dioxide as burning coal, if not more. And you're cutting down forests in North Carolina, South Carolina, Guyana, shipping it across the Atlantic, taking it to Drax and burning it. And that's where we now get 6% of our energy from. I think that's a crime.
Oh, it's an absolute crime.
Definitely.
We're being sold a lie. We're being sold a lie.
Apparently,
if you cut down all the trees in the whole of the USA, you would only power the USA for 1 year.
Right. Well, I didn't know that, but that's quite stunning. Because
that was in the documentary.
That's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable at all.
You know, you've got to keep using oil and gas, really, if you want to keep the economy going.
That's well worth watching. Well worth watching.
Do you know, David, I want to ask you, has the crime in London been escalating? What do you think about, and how would you tackle it?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, since 2015, 16, the year before Sadiq Khan came in, all categories of violent crime have gone up. It's terrible. Knife crime, particularly, is the one that a lot of people are concerned about. And you saw, you know, the weekend, you got now a lad was stabbed in broad daylight in the middle of Oxford Street. I mean, this is terrible, and this is going on. It's spilling out of where it was confined to before, and it's going through the roof. You know, you've got to stop being politically correct when you talk about policing. Stop and search is one of the best tools that police have to fight knife crime and gun crime, because they find knives, they find guns, they get them off the streets, and they find drugs, and you know, you arrest drug dealers and so on. So you've got to do that, and you've got to not be afraid to do that. But you know, you've got all this talk from you know the sort of the Marxist side of politics that the country is institutionally racist and systemically racist, and you shouldn't do stop and search, and you know, anybody who stops someone who's black is racially profiling them, and that's racist and so on. But you know, so much crime is black on black crime. You've got to be honest about that. And you know, you actually do care about the kids who are getting shot and stabbing, you stabbed and you know, sometimes shooting each other. You've got to go into those communities, and you've got to do stop and search, and you've got to find the criminals, you've got to arrest them, and you've got to put them in jail. And that's going to keep people safe, and it's going to keep everybody else safe as well.
I think that even here we don't tackle a really big issue. The most important issue, and that is about education. You know,
I think poverty and two things: poverty and education. Yes.
Well, I mean, education is very important. And, you know, with schools, I mean, that's not really in the remit of the mayor, but you know, you do need to support schools properly.
Absolutely,
and you know, this is something that's come. The government has, which is not Sadiq Khan's fault, to be honest. But this is the sort of Cameron May government of like reduced funding to schools in real terms.
I mean, everywhere. If you think, I think it's less and less opportunity, and this is why all this violence and everything is happening.
But one thing which is really important are families. And family stability is key.
Yes, I agree with you.
And fatherlessness is epidemic in the black community, much higher than in the white community, much higher than
But a lot of people aren't prepared to say that for fear about being tarred with being racist.
Right.
They are.
But it's a fact.
Yes, but people, I'm just saying that people are.
I know. I actually put that to Sadiq Khan, and he kind of dismissed it quite sarcastically.
Really?
That was in a mayor's question time 2 or 3 years ago. ago, but I've written about it, and on a number of occasions, and that is key. And so we need to support families, and we need to start, talking up the role of the father. And father figures are really, really important, especially for teenage boys.
Yes.
They don't have a father who's a good and a strong man to keep them on the straight and narrow and show them the way to go. They're going to turn to social media. They're going to get involved in gangs. And, everybody has individual responsibility once they do that. But you can stop people getting involved in crime if you make sure that kids are connected to their fathers. Or if they're not, they have a father figure to try
I
to
think
help
it's
them go
more,
on the straight
in
and
my
narrow.
opinion, children need good stability.
They do.
And good home. And yes, good home gives good stability.
And that's key. I mean, the state can't do everything. I mean,
that's
right.
The police have got to, be absolutely clear. If you commit a crime, whatever colour of skin you are, it's your responsibility, and you will be treated according to the law. We'll arrest you and we'll put you away. The police have got to stop being politically correct on that. But we need to, make sure that families and communities are supported and not broken down and dissolved. And I think there's quite a move, sort of under the surface, if you like, to undermine families, and families are undermined through the tax system as well.
Definitely.
And that's something that I don't think anyone will talk about, because it may be considered offensive to some people, but I don't see why it should be. If you are married to each other, a mother and father, you should be supported and encouraged to stay together, to look after your children and bring up your children. I think that's something that has all completely been lost out of any kind of discourse in politics.
Yes.
And, I would bring that back, because that really is a key factor in actually cutting crime. It's not something the state can do entirely on its own, but you need families, you need communities.
I always think education and opportunities. If young people don't have any sort of opportunities, or if they think that they haven't, then this is when
and
they
do
can.
you think there's sort of then certain fundamental values that have been lost in British politics completely by the mainstream families, mainstream parties?
Yeah.
Because you very rarely hear the mainstream parties talk about something like the value of the family, do you?
They all talk about the sort of left-wing progressive
Yes,
agenda.
exactly, but these aren't
the Marxist agenda, I mean, it comes from the Communist Manifesto. It's very, very anti-family, because what they want to do is make the state in control of everything. And it doesn't matter which political party you look at today, whether it's Labour, which will do it quickly, the Conservatives, I call them the fake Conservatives, because they're not conservative. They're actually pushing the same agenda as Labour and the Lib Dems, just a little bit more slowly, so you don't realise they're doing it. But they're all undermining the family. They're all undermining personal responsibility, private property, enterprise, opportunity. They don't want people to be free to think for themselves, to stand on their own 2 feet, to be enterprising. They want people to be dependent on the state, and I vote for them, or they're easy to control. I'm completely different. I've been invited to join a number of political parties, but I haven't, because I think that we need something new and different, which I would say is socially conservative. It's based on family values, independence, and individual liberty, and we need to get that back. And that is really a solution to a lot of things that are going on, because those kind of things have been eroded and corroded through the progressive Marxist agenda over many decades.
That's really interesting you say that. Do you think that there's much more of a thrust in, say, for example, the USA towards social conservatism rather than the UK, and that UK has got to catch up in a way on that that's something that's manifesting itself much more in the USA? Do you think that's true?
Well, at the moment it is, because you've got President Trump. And they were all pushing that direction with Obama, and President Trump is like a complete stop to the progressive program, in a way like Brexit was in this country, in a different sense, because the European Union was hollowing out our national sovereignty, and that's the sort of thing the globalist progressives wanted. So Brexit in this country is a very big pushback politically, but I mean in terms of more on a more sort of cellular level in the United States, what Trump is doing is he's allowing people to regain the sort of family values. There's more of that in the United States anyway, but what he's doing which is really good, that never gets spoken about much, is he was building the economy again. He's bringing jobs back from China to America so that American people can have a job, stand on their own 2 feet, be resilient, look after themselves, hold their head up high, think for themselves.
It seems that it's here in England, it's happening exactly opposite. It's like as if they don't want you to have a job. This is exactly what is happening to our trade, you know. It's like I can't fulfill my remit as a taxi driver if I can't go into certain roads. What do you think?
Well, that's certainly happening, you know, with the taxi trade in
and not only taxi trade, I think it's
and other businesses around, you know, because they're being stopped from using certain roads. But I mean that suits the biggest of big companies, you know, and small businesses that don't have a buffer or can't get access
globalization
to
again, isn't it?
Suffer, and a lot of small and medium-sized businesses are going to go out of business.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
You got that with the coronavirus thing at the moment, which is another situation. I mean, you know, I think we need to talk about that because I think the response to that has been completely ridiculous. And yeah, I was worried about it back in February when I saw pictures coming out of China, the reports from there, and people being welded into their blocks of flats, and you saw, you know, big hospitals being built. I thought this is going to be really, really serious. And you had the modelling done by Professor Ferguson that's now been discredited, and on the basis of that discredited modelling, when he said, you know, 250,000 people are going to die, they brought in all of these coronavirus restrictions. But now that modelling has proven to be wrong, we've actually got real data. It's nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yes, it was pretty serious. In the first couple of weeks of April, you had 10 to 15,000 more people dying every week than normal, as you do sometimes in a bad flu season. But now it's over. The people die every week, you know, because people get old, because they have health conditions. But it's the same rate now as it normally is.
So
the
why
pandemic's over. And
why do you think there's talk of second lockdown then? Would you think there's a different agenda at play there, or?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they're propagandizing this at the moment. It's quite shocking, really, that, you know, now we know that the coronavirus is over. You know, some people are still getting it, a small number of people, but largely it's over. But yeah, they've started talking about there's going to be a second lockdown in September. I think they're going to try and bring that in. Some people would like to have that for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And we've seen that in a couple of measures the government's made in July and August this year. You know, first of all, they did this stopping flights from coming in, quarantining if you've been to a certain country, like Spain. You go on holiday to Spain, you come back, you've got to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. Well, all through the pandemic, there were no restrictions on flights whatsoever. It's the most balmy rule anyone could make up. Is like, oh, the pandemic's over, now we're going to quarantine you if you come back. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And the whole mask thing, you know, no one had to wear a mask all the way through the pandemic. Now it's
we were told there was no purpose. We were told there was no purpose in wearing a mask.
What if you have to quarantine with me?
Well,
2 weeks.
that actually doesn't bear thinking about. That doesn't bear thinking about.
David,
there's the making of a horror movie.
I know. Do you think it's a space for the independent candidate? Candidates everywhere in.
I think so. I mean, you did see that actually in the local elections in 2019. I mean, that's over a year ago now. Many more independents got into seats in local councils around the country than ever before. So I think there were over 1,000 or so independents won seats. So I think on a local level, there is much more scope for independents to get in. And, you know, I'm going to be standing in the London Mayor and Assembly elections, so I'm certainly hoping that I will win in one or both of those contests. I'd love to be the London Mayor and make London great again.
I think you'd be an excellent mayor.
On that note, let's try the scones.
Marvellous.
Thank you, David. Thank
you very much, David.
Thank you, David.
Lovely to chat to you. Now, so vegan scones. Thank you. Okay, so I just take one here.
We are vegan queens.
Is this good? Do I need to say some prayers first?
Probably as we did the
Thank you.
cooking,
Well,
yeah.
I'll just have
Enjoy.
a little bit of cream.
Try a
You
little bit,
having
and
one as
That's
well?
vegan
Yes, we
cream.
will.
That's
You are,
vegan
but
substitute cream.
I'm the guest, so I go first, eh?
Yes, you are
Marvellous.
guest.
At least it's a little bit cooler now,
Yes.
isn't it?
This is very exciting.
Nothing is
So here we have David Kurten.
Sampling-
sampling,
the
Okay.
fruits of our labour, or should I say the fruits of
Wow.
Miana's labour? Yes.
and if you like to join us in our little program, just email us on menopausalvegan@gmail.com.
I'm glad you knew that because I didn't.
I know.
See you
That
again
was a
soon.
secret. See you.
We can't go yet.
Oh, we can. Okay.
Got
Why?
a very important question.
Oh yes.
If
Oh
the
yes,
ladies
David.
is enjoying it,
Okay, David. The most
sorry,
important
this is,
question.
they need prompting.
If you have to marry one of us.
No, the food, you idiot. It's
No.
the vegan.
No.
Is the food delicious? Which of course you've got to say
food.
yes.
Oh yeah. Oh sorry.
It'd be good if you said it's absolutely awful, wouldn't it?
No, tell us the truth.
The food. You know, I've never had a vegan scone before. But it's
What do
good.
you think?
It's good, actually.
Seriously, is it okay? Yeah.
It was moi. It was moi.
You? Oh,
With a little assistance
wow.
from me.
No, no, she's
Miss
been
Piggy.
assisting me. She's been assisting me.
No, it's different, but it's very nice. Yeah.
Good, good.
And now the question. I want to ask the question. If you have to marry one of us, don't worry, it's not going to be. Which one would
Did
it
you
be?
see that look of terror?
Yes, this is what I like.
Well, you know,
I'm like the government.
I actually was thinking that I might become a monk, so I don't know if I can marry either of them.
That's a
but-
brilliant
He's a
answer.
politician.
Yes, he's a politician.
Thank you very much,
Thank you,
David.
David. Thank you.